The ship landed hard on the gray ground. Doyan felt his bones shake as the metal door opened and cold air rushed inside. He held his wife's hand tight. Nari looked at him with tired eyes, but she did not cry. They had promised each other they would not cry. Outside, the world was empty. There were no trees, no grass, no rivers. Only rocks and dust stretched to the horizon under a pale yellow sky. This was Uel-Ho, for the prison planet. The Vorath Empire had sent them here to die slowly. 300 humans walked out of the ship that day. Men, women, and children. All of them prisoners. Their crime was simple. They were human. And humans had refused to kneel completely to the Vorath. The Vorath were tall creatures with gray skin and 4 arms. They had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. They believed in order. They believed in control. They believed that every living thing should follow their laws without question. But humans asked too many questions. Humans broke too many small rules. Humans made the Vorath nervous, so the Vorath sent them here, to this dead world. To learn humility, a Vorath officer stood on a metal platform. His voice was cold and sharp like breaking ice. He spoke through a translation device that made his words sound flat and lifeless. "You are here to learn the value of restraint," the officer said. "You are here to understand that life is a gift that must be controlled. You will receive supplies. You will receive shelter materials. And you will receive 1 seed." The humans looked at each other. 1 seed. What did that mean? The officer continued. "Each family unit will be given exactly 1 seed. You may plant it wherever you choose. You may grow it however you wish. But you may only have 1. This is the law. This is the seed law. Break it and you will be punished." Doyan listened carefully. He was an agricultural engineer. Back on Earth, he had spent 20 years studying plants and soil and water. He knew more about growing things than most people alive. And right now, his mind was working very fast. The Vorath soldiers handed out small metal boxes to each family. Inside each box was a single seed. Most of the seeds were common food plants. Some were flowers. A few were fruit trees. The Vorath did not care what kind of seed they gave. They only cared about the number. Duhian opened his box. Inside was a small brown seed. He recognized it immediately. His heart jumped in his chest. It was a seed from a Zelkova tree, a sacred tree from Korea. His grandmother had grown one in her garden when he was a child. He remembered sitting under its branches on hot summer days. He remembered the way its roots spread wide and deep, breaking through stone and concrete. He remembered how many other plants grew in its shadow. This was not just a tree. This was an ecosystem waiting to be born. Nari looked at the seed. "What will you do with it?" she asked quietly. Doyan closed the box. "Not yet," he said. "I need to think." The other colonists began planting their seeds right away. They dug small holes in the rocky ground. They placed their precious seeds inside and covered them with gray dust. They watered them with the small amount of water the Vorath had given them. And then they waited. Most of the seeds died within a week. The soil was too poor. The air was too thin. The sun was too weak. The colonists watched their one hope wither and turn brown. Some of them cried. Some of them gave up, but Doyan did not plant his seed. A Vorath inspector came to their shelter after 10 days. He was younger than the officer from the ship, with curious eyes that moved quickly. "You have not planted your seed," the inspector said. It was not a question. Doyan nodded. "I am waiting for the right time." The inspector made a mark on his tablet. "Non-compliant," he said. "You have 30 days. If the seed is not planted, there will be consequences." After the inspector left, Woojin came to visit. Woojin was an older man with gray hair and a serious face. The other colonists had chosen him as their leader because he was calm and wise. Doyan Woojin said, "You need to plant that seed. The Vorath are watching. They are looking for reasons to punish us." "I know," Doyan said. "But if I plant it wrong, it will die like the others. I need time to prepare the soil. I need time to find water." Woojin sighed. "There is no water here. There is nothing here. This planet is dead. No planet is truly dead, Doyan said. There is always something. We just need to find it. That night, Doyun and Nari walked far from the colony. The yellow moon hung low in the sky, casting strange shadows on the rocks. Nari carried equipment she had built from spare parts. She was a hydrologist. She studied water, and she knew that water hid in many places. They walked for 3 hours until Nari stopped suddenly. She pressed a device against the ground and listened. Here, she whispered. There is ice. Deep below. Maybe 200 meters down, but it is there. Doyen smiled for the first time since they arrived on this world. Then we have everything we need. They returned to their shelter before sunrise. Doyen took out the seed and held it in his palm. Such a small thing. Such a simple thing. But inside it was the memory of forests. Inside it was the dream of rain and rivers and green leaves dancing in the wind. The Vorath thought they were giving humans a punishment. They thought one seed meant one plant. One plant meant one small life struggling alone in the darkness. But the Vorath did not understand humans. They did not understand what humans could do with almost nothing. They did not understand that humans thought not in seeds, but in forests. Doyen looked at Nari. They gave us one seed, he said. They never said what kind. They never asked what it could become. Nari took his hand. Then let us begin. On the 29th day, Doyan finally planted his seed. He chose a spot where the underground ice was closest to the surface. He dug a hole with his bare hands. He mixed the gray dust with nutrients he had collected from food waste. He placed the seed gently inside and covered it with care. The Vorath inspector returned the next morning. He looked at the small mound of soil and nodded. Compliant, he said, and walked away. He did not ask what kind of seed it was. He did not ask why Dojin had waited so long. He did not ask about the strange patterns Nari had drawn in the dirt. Marking the path of the water far below, the Vorath saw a single seed in dead ground. They saw obedience. They saw surrender. But Doyan saw something else. He saw the first day of a very long plan. He saw roots that would break stone. He saw water that would rise from the darkness. He saw children and grandchildren who would walk through forests on a world that Vorath had meant to be a grave. The seed was planted. The law was followed, and the revolution had begun. 3 years passed on the gray world of Eulahofer. Most of the colonists had lost their seeds long ago. The plants had died in the poor soil, and hope had died with them. People worked, ate, slept, and waited for nothing. The Vorath sent supplies every 6 months. Just enough to survive. Never enough to live. But in one corner of the human colony, something was different. Doyen's tree had survived. It stood 3 meters tall now, with a trunk as thick as a man's arm. Its leaves were dark green, and they moved gently in the thin wind. The colonists came to look at it sometimes. They stood in its small shadow and remembered what trees felt like. Some of them touched its bark and cried. The Vorath inspectors came once a year. They counted the plants. They measured the water use. They checked that the seed law was followed. And every year, he saw Doyan's single tree and nodded with approval. They never looked below the ground Nayar had spent 3 years digging. Not with machines. The Vorath would have noticed machines. She dug with her hands, with small tools made from scrap metal, with patience that seemed endless. Every night after the colony slept, she went underground. The tunnels stretched for hundreds of meters now. They followed the natural cracks in the rock, going deeper and deeper toward the frozen water below. Nari had mapped every tunnel in her mind. She knew where the ice was thickest. She knew where the rock was weakest. She knew secrets about this dead planet that the Vorath had never imagined. And then, one night, she broke through. Water, cold and clear and beautiful. It came up from the deep ice in a thin stream, melted by the warmth of the tunnels above. Nari caught it in her hands and laughed. She had not laughed in 3 years. She ran to tell Doyen. He was sitting beside the tree, as he did every night, watching it, talking to it, loving it like a child. It worked, Nari said, her voice shaking. The water is flowing. Doyen stood up slowly. His eyes were wet. Show me. They went down into the tunnels together. The water was not strong. Just a trickle, really. But it was enough. Nari had built channels in the rock, tiny paths that guided the water upward. The water would flow to the roots of the tree. The roots would grow stronger. They would dig deeper into the stone. They would break it apart and make more paths for more water. It was a cycle, a system, a living machine that would build itself. But that was not the only secret they kept. Doyon had watched his tree carefully for 3 years. He had watched it grow and change with the seasons. And in the second year, the tree had done something wonderful. It had made seeds. 20-3 seeds fell from the tree that autumn, small and brown and perfect. Doyon collected every one. He held them in his hands and felt the weight of the future. The seed law said he could plant 1 seed. He had planted 1 seed, but the law said nothing about the children of that seed. The law said nothing about nature doing what nature always did. Doyon went to Wujin with his idea. The old leader listened with a worried face. The Vorath will not see it that way, Wujin said. They will say you have broken the law.
No?
Then let them say it, Doyon replied. Let them explain why a tree cannot make more trees. Let them explain why life cannot create more life. The law was about planting. I have only planted once. Wujin was quiet for a long time. If they punish you, they will punish all of us. If we do nothing, we will die on this rock. Slowly, one by one. Is that better? Wujin had no answer. That night, a woman came to Doyun's shelter. Her name was Minji. She was small and quiet, with dirt always under her fingernails. Before the Vorath took them, she had been a botanist. She studied plants the way some people studied stars. I heard what you were planning, Minji said. I want to help. Doyen looked at her carefully. It is dangerous. The Vorath could kill us. Minji smiled sadly. They are already killing us, just slowly. I would rather die trying to live. Together, they built the nursery. It was deep underground, far from the tunnels the Vorath might inspect. Minji designed growing beds from crushed rock and organic waste. Nari brought water through new channels she had carved. And Doyen planted the 23 seeds. Not in the surface. Not where the Vorath could see. But in the darkness below, where life could grow in secret. The seeds sprouted within a month. Tiny green shoots pushing up through the gray soil. Minji watched over them day and night. She knew exactly how much water they needed. She knew exactly how much light to give them from the small lamps they had built from spare parts. By the end of the 3rd year, 21 seedlings were alive and growing. 21 children of the first tree. 21 small rebellions against the law that was meant to break them, but they could not hide forever. A new Vorath inspector arrived one morning without warning. He was young, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. He walked through the human colony slowly, looking at everything. Looking at the way the dust was disturbed, looking at the paths the colonists walked. Looking at the ground, he stopped near Doyon's tree and knelt down. His 4 arms touched the soil gently. Then he stood and looked at Doyen with an expression that was hard to read. The soil here is different, the inspector said. Darker, richer, why? Dojan kept his face calm. The tree makes the soil better. That is what trees do. They drop leaves. The leaves become part of the ground. It is natural. The inspector was quiet. He looked at the tree for a long time. Then he looked at Doyon. I have read about your species, he said. You are creative. You find ways around rules. My superiors warned me about this. Doyon said nothing. The inspector took out his tablet and made several notes. Then he looked up at the pale yellow sky. The law says 1 seed per family. You have 1 tree. I see no violation. He paused. But I will be watching. I will be watching very closely. After he left, Nari came out of their shelter. Her face was pale. He knows something, she said. He suspects something, Doyon corrected. Suspicion is not proof, and proof is all that matters to the Vorath. They worship their laws. They cannot break them, even when they want to. That night, Doyan went down to the nursery. The 21 seedlings were glowing in the lamplight. Some were already half a meter tall. Their roots were spreading through the soil, reaching for the water. Reaching for life, he thought about his grandmother's garden. Back on Earth, he thought about sitting under the Zelkova tree as a child, watching the birds and the insects and the small animals that lived in its branches. A single tree was never really alone. A single tree was a whole world. The Vorith had given them one seed as a punishment. One seed to teach them about limits. One seed to break their spirit, but they had made a mistake. They had given that seed to humans, and humans did not think in seeds. Humans thought in forests. Duhayan touched one of the seedlings gently. "Grow," he whispered. "Grow strong, grow deep. And when the time comes, we will show them what one seed can become." Above him, in the darkness of the rock, the water continued to flow. The message came on a cold morning. Doyan was working in the underground nursery when Wudrin found him. The old leader's face was gray with fear. "They know," Wudrin said. "The Voroth Council has called you to trial. They say you have violated the seed law." Doyan put down his tools slowly. He had known this day would come. He had prepared for it. But still, his heart beat fast in his chest. "When?" he asked. "Now, they are waiting." The trial was held through a transmission screen. Doyan stood in the center of the colony, while the faces of the Vorath Council looked down at him. There were 7 of them, old and powerful, with cold eyes that had judged 1,000 worlds. The High Arbiter spoke first. His voice was like grinding stone. "You stand accused of violating the seed law of UL-Ho-4. Our inspectors report that 12 UL-Ho trees now grow in the human sector. 12 trees from one seed. Explain yourself." Doyan looked up at the screen. He had practiced this moment 100 times in his mind. He knew exactly what to say. "Honored Council," he began, his voice calm and clear, "I have not violated your law. I planted one seed, as the law allowed. One seed. No more." "Then explain the 12 trees," the Arbiter demanded. "The 12 trees are the children of my one seed. They grew from seeds that fell from my tree, seeds that my tree made on its own. I did not plant them. Nature planted them." The council was silent. Doyan could see confusion on their faces. This was not the answer they expected. Another council member spoke. "You are saying the trees planted themselves?" "I am saying that life creates more life. That is what life does. Your law forbids planting. I have not planted anything except my one seed. The other trees grew, because that is the nature of trees. They make seeds. Seeds fall to the ground. Seeds grow. This is not planting. This is existence." The Arbiter leaned forward. "You are playing with words. Human. I am speaking the truth, Arbiter. Your law was about the act of planting. The act of choosing to put a seed in the ground. I chose once. Everything after that was the choice of nature, not me." The council talked among themselves in their own language. Doyan could not understand the words, but he could see the argument in their movements. Some of them were angry. Some of them were uncertain. And some of them, he thought, were almost impressed. Finally, the Arbiter spoke again. "We will consider your argument. You will wait for our judgment." The screen went dark. Doyan let out a long breath. Nari came to him and held his hand. "What will they decide?" she asked. "I do not know. But I gave them a problem they cannot easily solve. Their laws are rigid. They cannot bend them even when they want to. If they punish me for something the law does not forbid, they break their own rules." While they waited for the judgment, Nari worked faster than ever. She expanded the water channels. She dug new tunnels. She connected the deep ice to more and more of the colony. And then something amazing happened. The water found its own path to the surface. It came up through cracks in the rock that Nari had never touched. It pooled in a low area near the original tree and began to flow downhill. Stream. A real stream with clear water running over gray stones. Taiho was the first to find it. He was 7 years old now, a quiet boy with his father's eyes and his mother's determination. He had grown up on this dead world. He had never seen a river. He had never felt water running past his feet. When he saw the stream, he stood very still. Then he took off his shoes and stepped into the water. It was cold. It was wonderful. It was alive. Other children came running. They splashed and laughed and shouted. The adults came too, standing at the edge of the stream with tears on their faces. Water. Running water. On a planet the Vorath had called dead, Wujin stood beside Dojan. Watching the children play, this will change everything, Wujin said. That is the idea, Doyan replied. 3 days later, the Vorath Council gave its judgment. The arbiter's face was stiff with frustration. We have examined the law carefully, he said. The seed law forbids the planting of more than one seed per family unit. It does not address the natural reproduction of permitted plants. Doyan felt hope rise in his chest, but the arbiter was not finished. However, we recognize that humans have found a way to circumvent the spirit of our law while obeying its letter. This is unacceptable. Therefore, we add a new clause to the regulations of EULA 4, the arbiter read from a document. No colonist may create new water sources. All water must come from approved Vorath supplies. Any attempt to access underground water or redirect natural water flow is forbidden. The screen went dark. Nar stood frozen. She looked at the stream flowing past the tree. The stream that was already there. The stream she had already created. They're too late, Dojan whispered. The water's already free. But they knew the danger was not over. The Vorath would send inspectors. Vorath would investigate. If they discovered how deep the tunnels went, how far the water had spread, there would be consequences. That night, Doyan called a meeting. All the colonists gathered around the first tree, which now stood 8 meters tall. Its branches spread wide, and smaller trees grew in its shadow. The sound of the stream filled the air. The Vorath have made a new law, Doyan said. They say we cannot create water sources. But they did not say we must destroy the ones that already exist. The stream is here. The water is flowing. Did not create it after the law was made. And will not see it that way, someone said. Then we will make them see it. The Vorath worship their laws. They cannot break them. They cannot punish us for something that happened before the law existed. That is their way. Minji stepped forward. What do we do now? Doyan looked up at the tree. 12 trees had become the subject of a trial. But in the underground nursery, there were now over 100 seedlings waiting to be moved to the surface. The roots of the original tree had spread so far that they were breaking rock a kilometer away. The soil was changing. The air was changing. Life was waking up. We continue, Doyan said. We grow. We spread. We fill this world with green until the Vorath cannot ignore it, till they have to ask themselves a question they have never asked before. What question? Wujin asked. Doyan smiled. It was a tired smile, but it was real. They will have to ask themselves if life can be stopped. When they look at this world, at what we have built from one seed in our bare hands, they will know the answer. Behind him, Taiho was sitting by the stream with his feet in the water. He was humming a song his mother had taught him, a song from Earth, a song about rain falling on mountains and rivers running to the sea. The Vorath had made their laws. They had drawn their lines. They had tried to contain life in a box of rules and regulations. But life did not read laws. Life did not care about lines. Life just grew. 15 years had passed since the humans landed on Yulho. 15 years since. Doyan held a single seed in his palm and smiled. 15 years since the Vorath gave them a dead world and told them to learn humility. The Vorath had made a mistake. The human sector was no longer recognizable. Where gray rock once stretched to the horizon, there was now a forest. Real trees with real leaves reaching toward the pale yellow sky. Some stood 20 meters tall. The branches wove together overhead, creating a canopy that blocked the harsh light and held in the moisture. The air was thick and humid. It smelled like life. The stream Nari had created had grown into a small river. It flowed through the center of the colony, feeding irrigation channels that spread like blood vessels through the soil. Plants grew along its banks, not just trees now, but bushes and flowers and grasses that Mingy had cultivated from seeds hidden in the original shipment of supplies. And there was sound. That was the strangest thing of all. On a world that had been silent for 1,000,000 years, there was now sound. Birds sang in the trees. Mingy had smuggled them. Not as living creatures, which the Vorith would have found, but as frozen embryos hidden in her hair. She had grown them in secret during the early years, small birds with bright feathers that ate insects and spread seeds. They filled the forest with music. Insects hummed in the undergrowth. Worms moved through the soil. Small creatures that the humans had brought in secret had found a home in this new world. The ecosystem was growing. It was becoming real. When the Vorath inspection delegation arrived, they did not believe what they saw. The High Arbiter himself had come. He was very old, even by Vorath's standards, with pale gray skin and eyes that had seen the rise and fall of civilizations. He had judged 1,000 worlds. He had never seen anything like this. He walked through the forest slowly. His forearms hung at his sides. His mouth was open. For a long time he did not speak. Wujin met him at the entrance to the colony. The old leader was 70 years old now, with white hair and a bent back. But his eyes were still sharp, and his voice was still strong. "Welcome to Yulho 4, Wujin said. "Welcome to our home," the Arbiter looked at him. "This is not possible," he said. "We gave you 1 seed per family, 300 families. 300 seeds. Most of them died in the first year. Some of them lived," Wujin said. "And from those few, we built this." But the law, the Arbiter stopped, seemed to be struggling with something. The law allowed 1 seed. 1. How can 1 seed become this? Wujin smiled. It was a kind smile, not a mocking one. "Honored Arbiter, you gave us 1 seed, that is true, but you did not understand what 1 seed means to humans. Explain." Wujin gestured at the forest around them. "A seed is not a single thing to us. A seed is a beginning. A seed is a promise. Inside every seed is not just 1 plant, but 1,000 plants. 1,000,000 plants. An entire world waiting to be born." The Arbiter shook his head. "That is poetry. That is not law." Wujin agreed. "It is not law. It is something the law cannot touch. It is nature. It is life. And life does not follow laws, Arbiter. Life follows its own rules." They walked deeper into the forest. The Arbiter saw children playing by the river, saw families eating fruit from trees that had grown from seeds that had grown from other seeds. He saw old people sitting in the shade, telling stories about a world called Earth that they would never see again. He saw humans living, not surviving. Living. "My people built an empire by controlling life," the Arbiter said quietly. "We learned that chaos comes from growth, that war comes from competition, that peace comes only from order and limitation." Perhaps Wujin said, "But look at this place. There is no war here. There is no chaos. There is only life helping life, trees feeding soil, water feeding roots, birds spreading seeds. Everything connected, everything in balance." The Arbiter was silent for a long time. When the delegation left, the Vorath Council met to decide what to do. The Arbiter presented his report. He showed images of the forest. He played recordings of the birds singing. He described the river and the insects and the green that spread across the dead gray rock. "They have followed every law," he said. "I examined everything. 1 seed per family, no machines, no forbidden technology. They have done this with their hands and their minds and nothing else." "Then how?" a council member demanded. "How is this possible?" "Because we did not understand them," the Arbiter replied. "We thought we were punishing them. We thought we were teaching them humility. But we were wrong. We gave them exactly what they needed. We gave them a challenge. And humans, I have learned, become most dangerous when they are challenged." The council argued for days. Some wanted to destroy the forest. Some wanted to kill all the humans. Some wanted to pretend it had never happened. But others asked different questions. They asked why the Vorath homeworld was gray and lifeless. They asked when their own ancestors had last walked through a forest. They asked if order and control had truly brought peace, or only a different kind of death. On Yulho 4, the humans did not know about the Council's arguments. They only knew that the Vorath did not return. The inspections stopped. The supply ships still came, but no soldiers came with them. Taiho was a grown man now. He was 22 years old, tall and strong, with hands that were always dirty from working the soil. He had his father's mind and his mother's patience. And he had an idea. One night he walked to the edge of the human sector. Beyond the boundary markers, the world was still gray, still dead. The forest stopped exactly where the Vorath law said it must stop. Taiho held a seed in his hand. It came from the original tree, passed down through 15 generations of plants. Inside it was the memory of his father's hope. Inside it was the dream of his mother's water. Inside it was the music of the birds and the whisper of the wind through the leaves. He looked at the gray ground beyond the boundary. The seed law said humans could plant one seed in the human sector. But this was not the human sector. This was Vorath territory. And no law said anything about planting seeds on Vorath land. Taiho dug a small hole. He placed the seed inside. He covered it with gray dust. Then he walked back to the forest and said nothing to anyone. He did not need to. The seed would speak for itself. In a month, it would sprout. In a year, it would be a small tree. In 10 years, it would be a forest of its own. And the Vorath would have to decide what to do about life that did not ask permission. The green was spreading. The water was flowing. The birds were singing songs that echoed across the dead world, and somewhere in the gray emptiness beyond the human colony, a single seed waited in the darkness, dreaming of the sun, 20-5 years after the first seed was planted. Taiho stood before the Grand Council of the Vorath Empire. He was not afraid. He had been raised in a forest that should not exist, on a world that should have been his grave. He had learned from his father that patience was the strongest weapon. He had learned from his mother that water always finds a way. He was the child of impossible things. The council chamber was enormous. 100 Vorath sat in rows that rose toward a ceiling lost in shadow. Their forearms were folded across their chests. Their gray faces showed no emotion. But Taiho could feel their uncertainty. He could smell their fear. The High Arbiter spoke. He was very old now, the same one who had walked through the forest 10 years ago. His voice was weaker, but his words were still sharp. Human Taiho, you are charged with planting a seed on Vorath territory. You have violated the boundary laws. You have spread your corruption beyond the human sector. What do you say? Taiho looked up at the council. I planted a seed, he said simply. That is true. I do not deny it. Then you admit your crime, admit my action. Whether it is a crime depends on the law, and I have read your laws carefully, Arbiter. The seed law applies to the human sector. It says nothing about Vorath territory. It was written to limit what humans could grow in their own space. It never imagined that a human would plant something in yours. The council murmured. Taiho could see them checking their records, reading the old law, finding the hole he had found. But before the Arbiter could respond, something happened that changed everything. A young Vorath stood up in the gallery. He was not a council member. He was just a citizen, ordinary and unimportant. But his voice carried through the chamber. I have been to the human world, he said. I have seen their forests. I have walked under their trees and listened to their birds and felt their water on my skin. And I want to know why we do not have such things. The council was shocked. Citizens did not speak at trials. Citizens did not question the council. But the young Vorath continued. My grandmother told me stories. Stories about our homeworld when she was young. She said there were trees on Vorath Prime. She said there were rivers and forests and animals that sang. But we destroyed them. We cut them down and paved them over because we believed that control was better than life. More Vorath stood up. First, a few, then dozens. They spoke about their own grandmothers, their own stories, their own half-forgotten memories of green. The Arbiter raised his hand for silence. The chamber slowly grew quiet. Bring the elder human, the Arbiter said. The one who planted the first seed. I would hear his words. Doyan was 73 years old. His hair was white. His hands shook. He needed help to walk, and his son Taiho helped him to the center of the chamber. But his eyes were still bright. His mind was still sharp. And when he spoke, his voice filled the room. "Honored Council," Doyan began. 25 years ago, you gave my people 1 seed each. You meant it as a punishment. You wanted to teach us that life should be limited, controlled, contained in small boxes that follow your rules. He paused. The council was silent. But you made a mistake. You did not understand what a seed is. A seed is not a limit. A seed is a beginning. Inside every seed is the memory of every plant that came before it. Inside every seed is the dream of every plant that will come after. You cannot control a seed. You can only plant it and watch it grow. Doyan looked at the faces around him. Vorath faces. Alien faces. But he saw something familiar in them. Something he recognized. Your ancestors knew this, he said. Your grandmothers remembered. You were once a people who loved the green, who listened to the wind in the trees, who swam in rivers and watched birds fly across the sky. But you forgot. You built your laws and your order and your control, and you forgot what it felt like to be alive. The Arbiter leaned forward. And what do you want from us, human? What is the purpose of this speech? Doyan smiled. It was a gentle smile, the smile of a grandfather talking to a confused child. I want nothing from you. Life wants nothing from you. Life does not ask permission. Life does not follow laws. Life is a force, like gravity, like time. You can regulate a seed, but you cannot regulate the sun that makes it grow. You cannot regulate the rain that feeds it. You cannot regulate the roots that break through stone. He gestured toward the images of Yulho for that floated above the chamber. The forest. The river. The birds. The green spreading across the gray. You gave us 1 seed and we gave it back to the universe 1,000,000 times over. Not because we are special. Not because humans are better than Vorith. But because that is what life does. Life grows. Life spreads. Life finds a way. Before anyone could respond, a messenger entered the chamber. He whispered something to the Arbiter. The old Vorith's face changed. For the first time, Taiho saw something like wonder in his eyes. I have received news from Yulho 4, the Arbiter announced. The forest has begun to spread beyond the human colony. It is moving on its own. Seeds are blowing in the wind. Birds are carrying them to new places. The gray rock is turning green without any human intervention. The chamber erupted in noise. Vorath shouting. Vorath arguing. Vorath asking questions that had no answers. But Taiho just smiled. He knew this would happen. He had known it for years. The forest did not need humans anymore. It had learned to grow on its own. It had become what all forests become given enough time. It had become unstoppable. The trial was suspended. The council argued for 3 days. And when they finally gave their judgment, it was not what anyone expected. The Arbiter stood before the chamber. His voice was tired but calm. We do not punish the human Taiho. We cannot punish him for doing what life itself does. We cannot make laws against the wind and the rain and the growing of seeds. He paused. Instead, we ask for something. We ask the humans of Yulhofora to send teachers to our homeworld. We ask them to show us what we have forgotten. We ask them to help us remember how to grow. Nari stepped forward. She was the eldest of the original colonists now. Her hair was silver. Her face was lined with years of hard work, but she stood straight and proud. We will send teachers, she said. But we have one condition. Name it. Nari looked at the council. At the Vorith citizens who had spoken about their grandmothers. At the Arbiter who had finally understood. No laws about seeds, she said. Not ever again. The Arbiter was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. Agreed. And so it ended. Not with war. Not with violence. Not with conquest or destruction. It ended with a promise. A promise to let life be life. A promise to remember what had been forgotten. A promise to let the green spread wherever it wanted to go. Do-Yan died 2 years later, surrounded by his family, under the branches of the first tree. The tree he had grown from a single seed on a dead world. The tree that had become a forest. The tree that had changed everything. His last words were simple. "One seed," he whispered. "That was all we ever needed." The wind moved through the leaves. The birds sang their songs. The water flowed toward the sea, and across the galaxy, the green tide was rising.